morning, everybody. Welcome back to MeganMeSmile. And even though we have an episode coming out tonight, I did still want to take time to recap this one particular episode of Real Housewives today, mainly because it is one that really rocked me and resonated with me on a personal level. So I will just preface this recap by saying that it is an emotional one, which means you all can probably guess that we are recapping the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. This is season 6, episode 4, called Petty Little Liars. And besides just a bunch of petty little bickering back and forth, there are a lot of really emotional conversations that take place on this show, especially with this episode, that really just rattled me. So I will give a bit of a trigger warning here that if you are somebody that has mommy issues, this episode or recap or both are not for you. So it was a lot. So I will just preface by saying that. But we kick off this episode wrapping up Lisa's Clarity luncheon. The women are still going back and forth, and the conversation really pivots from going at it towards Lisa, and Lisa just pushing it all back on other people, namely Angie K. She accuses Angie K of not owning as many of her franchised hair salons, Lunatic Fringe Salon. Angie says that she owns 3. Lisa says she owns 1.5. There's this back and forth of little minute details that don't really make sense, but as I'm watching, I'm noticing that this tactic that Lisa is using is deflection and pointing specific details that will really get under another person's skin, to have them starting to think about themselves, defending themselves, because now we've stopped focusing on you and all of the grievances we're airing about you, and we're now trying to, use all of our time and energy to defend ourselves and the accusations you're making on us. So I feel like it does look pretty clear that that is what Lisa's doing to Angie right now. But I will say Angie really does come back and has a little zinger, which we've already heard it so many times this week, but she says the whole you do French fries, I do franchise thing. I guess it's kind of like a dig at Wendy's, which Wendy's got into the Twitter beef with Angie K the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, not some Gen Z intern having their moment, but they go back and forth. But the conversation does take a turn when Angie says, well, you can sit here and peddle a brand deal or partnership with Kerastase, but meanwhile, I invested in your son's hair care line, Fresh Wolf, that has been collecting dust for the last 2 years on the shelves in my salon. Why haven't you done any marketing towards that? Why are you going and peddling for a new brand deal with a luxury line that I've already had a partnership with for 20 years. So that is where things definitely took a turn, and I didn't realize just how involved Angie K may have been with getting Fresh Wolf off the ground. So I can see why Angie might be like, look, you're out here getting brand deals with people I've been working with. Meanwhile, I'm investing in your own hair care line. I'm even offering to put it on my shelves to get sales, but I'm not going to be pushing it for you. You got to do some marketing, and where have you been? So all of this is going back and forth, and eventually Heather has to chime in and basically just summarize everything we just saw, because Heather noticed that she wasn't in the scene and needed to be in it, is pretty much what happens here. You also kind of notice, and she does confirm this later on, but Heather looks like she was hitting those cocktails a little too quick before she chimed in and gave her 2 cents. But she does admit later, at lunch with Mary the next day, that she did have too much to drink. And I'm like, I could tell. But, they're talking about how nothing just feels fun anymore. Everybody has their own things going on. Lisa does say, well, I'm different than all of you. I was raised differently, but that doesn't mean that I'm not vulnerable. But even Mary, Bronwyn, everyone chimes in and says, but how do we know that if you don't tell us? So Bronwyn even jumps in and says, I don't take any pride in reading about or questioning you on the things that we are right now. And actually, I really don't think she does. I think because Bronwyn has already been through enough in her own life, and she has seen how people have criticized her and made her feel like she's never enough. I actually think maybe she's reading it to be nosy and to fact find, sure. But I don't think that she's trying to be entirely malicious right now. I think she's just trying to look for transparency here and offer support, but really there's like kind of no way to win in this situation, because if you're bringing it on the show, like already it looks messy. So they're still continuing to go back and forth, talking about how Fresh Wolf should be in Walmart, which that is not a diss. So I would be perfectly fine if Fresh Wolf was in Walmart, and it would actually probably make more money. So like, go there. I mean, did people just see, it was the swimwear line that Megan Thee Stallion put in Walmart, and I'm like, she's making a bag because people shop there. The people that watch your show shop there, so like appeal to them. But whatever. So basically the whole fight just kind of ends with them saying like, even when I hate you, I love you, all that kind of stuff. We know based on like Instagram and I think the social media of it all, that these ladies like went out and had like drinks and stuff after the fact, which might explain why Heather was continuing to be pretty litty titty. But some people were criticizing that and saying like, oh, then it just seems like that fight is staged, and like, how can they just go out for drinks and be like having a good time later? But I actually don't think it was staged at all. In fact, I think that makes what the upcoming scenes seem even more real, because later when we talk about how Lisa sent her assistant to go pick up the Fresh Wolf products from Angie's salon, she is so absolutely perplexed because, like we all saw on social media, they thought they squashed it, said their whole like, even when I'm mad at you, I still like love you and all, and went out and celebrated. So she's like, wait, now why are you sending your assistant here the next day? So I actually don't think that was a sign that things were scripted. I think it's a sign that like, yeah, they'll beef with each other and all like on camera and like air it all out as they need to. But it seemed like they kind of came to some level of resolution after that luncheon to some extent that I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw them out later. I mean, we know they all have to travel to come to these places to film anyway. We know that they all don't live like in the same neighborhood per se. So like if they're already there, they're more than likely going to go out. So I didn't really see much wrong with that. But we have a couple other quick scenes. The next scene that we get is Meredith at her store, and she's with her husband Seth and daughter Chloe. And that's where she talks about wanting to expand and have like a little cafe in the store where she can also serve her caviar. I know Meredith has her caviar and everything, and she's very fancy and all, but I just feel like Meredith is doing like so much so fast. It's like you have the store, you have the DJ career right now, your children have Next Gen NYC that you're on sometimes, you have other business acumens, you have a law degree that you like, I mean, I know she uses that occasionally as well, so just adding another element in a cafe in your store that you're already like working on, it just seems like a lot right now. So they're working on that and have a cute little scene together. I mean, it's fine. Heather and Mary end up having their lunch that I referenced earlier, where they're just kind of catching up about what the luncheon was like. Heather does admit that she was pretty drunk and that the tequila kind of hit her, and Mary, oh, Mary, she was like, yeah, I don't like tequila. It tastes like hospital. And we get the flashback to when Mary tells Jen Shaw that she smells like hospital. So again, we always are referencing Jen Shaw in these episodes. So it's like, I love Bravo, love Andy, love Real Housewives, love it all. But for a franchise and for Andy to say that they never want Jen on their TV screens ever again, they really are using what clips and B-roll they do have of her in the meantime. So I'm just saying. But it was kind of funny and cute, and we just like love Mary having these moments because she was like, oh, you know how like everything that smells bad also has a bad taste. Like when you fart, you can taste it. And I'm like, yeah. But like, come on, Mary. So that was funny. So then we cut over to Whitney Wild Rose and her husband Justin, and they're setting up none other than a stripper pole in the living room. And if we remember much about Whitney and her entrance onto this franchise, we know that she was the wild child, the party girl that was kind of being whispered about in the carpool line. And she really tried to mute herself, become a CEO, start her business that she mentions again that failed. And in this process, she realized she really lost who she was and wants to get back to that essence of being a bit of a wild one. And she's putting her pole back up. And although we know that there was a scene that got Justin allegedly fired from his job and that she really did tone it down a bit, I do kind of like seeing Whitney get back to this. And it did have me even think, as far as we know, Whitney Wild Rose or Wild Rose Beauty, I think it's being relaunched again. And I think this might be like the 5th, 6th, maybe 7th iteration of her business. And shout out Brooke Ashley, because I think she mentioned something like this on her Salt Lake recap, but it had me thinking even further. And when I was watching, you know, a lot of the housewives nowadays, they come on the show and they're usually, you know, trying to push out some sort of business or product or something to us. But sometimes that product doesn't really match the housewife or what they're known for. Like, you know, we have Angela Oakley coming out with her fan, makes perfect sense. But I noticed Whitney's always been about that pole life. She's always been a bit of a wild child. And yeah, they live in a pretty modest area, but why doesn't she fill that gap that we have in Housewives right now, where we don't really have like a fitness person anymore? Like, I think when Tamara got rid of the gym, like that was kind of the last bit of like a fitness guru. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but do we have like a fitness person? And I know Whitney's not really like a fitness person, but I'm leaning into the idea of, if she can't go full on, like, I'm gonna teach pole dancing classes and have that be my business in like a sexual way, could she do it as like a fitness class? And then can she go a step further and maybe like do a collab with like Pleaser's Heels and come out with her own line, or some like cute like outfits to wear like on the pole or things like that? I'm just thinking you could be Whitney Wild Rose, but have that wild be like, release that inner wild side, but then have like these rosy decor outfits, the shoes, but also, and it doesn't even have to be in person. You could start a Patreon, start a subscription, monthly subscription, and either do live fitness classes where you're doing it right from home with your pole, and you can like give them recommendations, have an Amazon storefront for like whatever pole or whatever to have them start with. And you could do pre-recorded or live fitness classes. And I bet even if you started small, girl, even if you said, look, you will get, oh my God, I'm starting real modest, because you want a lot of people and you want them to stay. Like, if you did like, I know it sounds low, but like $4.99 a month for Patreon, and you said that they would get, let's see, 2 live fitness classes that month and 2 pre-recorded fitness classes. And then they could like access the live ones later. So that's 4 videos a month for $4.99. So like, yeah, it's $1 a video, but that's more than you'll be making in AdSense views, you know? And if you have people in there, they can ask for specific things. Say, how do you do this on the pole? Do beginner? I'm rambling, and I believe in another life I was like an agent or owned like a PR agency or something, because I love thinking of these ideas. But Whitney, if you somehow watch this or it somehow gets to you, talk to me, because I have a whole business model in my head that could work out perfectly for Whitney Wild Rose, pole dancing, fitness, and creativity and expression. I think that is her lane, and we are missing somebody in that lane in Housewives right now. Somebody get this to her. Call me up, Whitney. We'll talk. But after let's move on from there. I liked that scene. But we get to one of our main scenes, which is where Lisa and Bronwyn meet up at her Vita lounge and really unpack a lot of like the family issues we know from earlier scenes and seasons, that they actually are connected because Lisa and John, her husband, know Gwen's grandparents, like on the father's side. And so there's kind of like that connection there because Bronwyn has no contact with them. So they really unpack a lot of things that hurt a lot of them, whether they did it intentionally, like they did want to inflict harm and feel pain for that they felt themselves, or it wasn't intentional. They do really kind of unpack a lot of it. And Bronwyn even says, like, I don't want this to be a race to the bottom. I can tell that Bronwyn, like, she doesn't want to see another woman fail. I could be wrong, and people who don't care for her, they might come for me and say like, no, that's not true. But I just look at Bronwyn as somebody who's already been through it. And when I think of a lot of the stuff I've been through in my life, or I see somebody going through something that I've gone through previously, as much as I may not like that person or may feel like they need to experience like this karma, I can't. Like, I just, and I even have chills thinking about it right now. Like, I'm not somebody who's going to want my own worst enemy to experience something that dark for me, because I can never dislike somebody to the level of pain that something in my personal life might make me feel. Like, the hatred I have for a person can't compare to the inner pain and darkness that I felt during a dark time. And if I'm giving that person that much energy that I would want them to feel that pain, then am I fully healed from it? No. So I can see that in Bronwyn. I don't know if I can see that in Lisa. I think, and I'll get into this later when I talk about the whole mommy issues of it all, but a lot of what I see in Lisa is that she may listen to somebody who's going through a hard time or have a hardship in their life or a backstory, but it almost appears to me like she has to make sure that she has an inconvenience in her life that is worse. She doesn't want you to be the number one victim because she wants people there to always be able to rally around her or to sympathize with her or to really feel that she's as different as she feels compared to these women. It's a very fascinating conversation between the two of them because eventually after they parcel out every little detail and realize that that's going to get them nowhere, they do apologize and say that they do care deeply for each other and their families and want the best for them, which brings up how Lisa's son is going to be back from his mission soon. We hear that Bronwyn's mentioning a bit about Muzzy moving in with her and Todd, and how it's just a lot different and affecting her. So for me, I just was watching this conversation in awe because there really weren't that many cuts if I understand, like just from what I was watching. It didn't look like a lot was chopped from the conversation. And just to see how deep and dark and the depths in which they'll go to talk about each other's families and what they know or don't know and how they'll unpack that, only to end kind of like laughing and giggling and being like, husbands are off limits, like you got to lay off Todd or you have to lay off John, because Lisa also shares that that's very triggering for her is when somebody brings up her husband. And then they're just laughing and giggling and the rest of the day is fine. And I'm just like, whew, all right, if we can move on that quick, so be it. But again, that brings up a conversation of that I mentioned on another episode where you can tell the housewives that are coworkers and that are friends. And in this instance, I feel like Bronwyn wants to be friends with Lisa. I know Todd doesn't want her to be friends with Lisa, but to me, I just see that Lisa looks at her as a coworker. Like she can keep the conversation cordial, wrapping up, look like the happy-go-lucky person. Because remember at the luncheon the other day, Heather told her like, this isn't fun anymore. I'm not having fun. I'm not friends with you for the lawsuits or the businesses or anything. I'm friends with you for who you are, and I don't like this. So that's where we wrap up that scene, which cuts us to another pretty emotional and really deep scene, but this time with Mary and her cousin Big Joe. We know that he has been doing some renovations to their church, taking his time, keeping it in the family. But once they get in and sit down, they do start to unpack some things that have been going on with Mary's son, Robert Jr. We know that it's been a roller coaster of an experience for him battling some of the things that he's going through, but as always, I don't want to talk about it too much because that's his story, and whatever I'm covering is probably not what's going on in present day. So I just, what I can say is I'm thankful at the way Mary is approaching Robert Jr. on TV, because I know there's some questions of like, can he consent to this story being told or being filmed? You know, is there a level of pressure to be filmed? But to me, I don't get that vibe. I hope I'm right about that. But they do share how Mary and Robert Jr. are closer than ever. And thankfully they have that communication where they can really talk about what he's going through, because Mary didn't always have that growing up. She loves that Robert Jr. has such a good heart, and she wants to make sure that that continues to be what she instills in him and that she puts out into the world. So that brings up the conversation of how they're excited to get the church up and moving again, but it does make her reflect a bit on her mother, some of the struggles that she had between the dynamics with her mother, her grandmother, and the power imbalance in the church. When we kind of splice all of it together, we see that after Mary's grandmother passed away, she essentially had, for lack of a better word, prophecies or envisioned what the generations beyond her looked like. Mary's mother, however, really took that power and vision literally to the point where it seems like she was removed from the church at one point. But one of her grandmother's final wishes was that it would be Mary, not Mary's mother, but Mary. So like her granddaughter would marry her step-grandfather. So step is nice, that it's not biological, but Mary was like, you know, as much as I saw things not being right, I did feel like I needed to fulfill or, you know, know that I did what my grandmother would have wanted, or even my mother too, when she married her step-grandfather. We have Robert Jr., but now Mary's running the church, and it does kind of feel like in her confessional that she has a responsibility to be a leader, but that she also feels like a bit of a weight lifted off of her shoulders, knowing that her mom has since passed and that a lot of those behaviors may have been dark. And you can see that she even feels bad saying that a little bit, but you can tell that there is kind of a weight lifted off because we have some pop-ups of articles that Mary's mother had put in the press about her. So things just weren't great. So what I can say is I'm very thankful that Mary is not raising her son, it seems, in this way, and that she really cares for him and is looking out for him and checking on him and loving him so much. And I love seeing that. There's a bit of comic relief at the end of this scene because I'm getting so teary-eyed, misty-eyed watching it, and Mary reaches in her purse to grab like a tissue to blow her nose, and she realizes, I'm almost positive it is like a multicolored Louis Vuitton like COVID mask, and she's like blowing her nose with it, and that just like, we needed that in that moment. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. So after we leave the church, we head over to Lunatic Fringe Salon, where Angie shares that her cosmetology license has been lapsed for a little while and she wants to get back into it, which I didn't find to be that odd because it seems like she really took the business route. And with that, I could see how if she's managing the business, things like that can just fall to the wayside if she's not actually practicing and doing the hair at that point. I know she does have like a really good model for her franchised salon, so that's probably why there. But I also think, you know, sometimes you might have to get behind the chair and do some hair. So, you know, I feel like it's definitely smart that she is staying on top of that. But in order to do that, she has to practice. So she brings Heather in to do a perm, no solution or anything, so it won't hold, but she's doing her hair. And while she's doing it, this is where we bring back up that story where Angie is so perplexed because Lisa's assistant comes in to get all of those Fresh Wolf products off the shelves. So I guess after the luncheon, Lisa was like, screw it. She wants to make a comment about my products. I don't even want them in her store. Now, mind you, we do know that allegedly Angie K invested in this, so I don't know where the product's supposed to be or what, but assistant comes to get it. Angie K was like, well, good, I took it off the shelves because it wasn't selling, so I'll get it. It's collecting dust back here, so to speak. Goes and gets it for her, and as she goes to leave, the assistant says, oh, by the way, Angie, Lisa Venmo'd you for the products. So that answers that question about the money. I'm like, are you kidding me? So Lisa Venmo'd Angie $600 and essentially said, Venmo'd you for the Great Wolf products, $600, you can have it. Also, I can send cleaners to your salon. I'm sorry, it's so dusty. And that's where I'm like, okay, well, apparently when they all went out after the luncheon Lisa had, they weren't fine because look at this mess. Like, were you sitting on it and you were like, you know what, on second thought? But Angie waxed right back and she was like, you know what? You can send that money to the people you actually owe, and my salon's not dusty, but your products are from sitting on my shelves. I'm like, oh my goodness. Only for it to get kind of confusing because Lisa responds back and says, well, at least I don't go on vacations that I can't pay for with a credit card not in my name or something like that. And that's when Angie tells Heather that part was confusing because, like, what are you talking about? And if we remember that, you know, Lisa's kind of using this tactic of deflecting or taking what's happening to her and projecting it onto somebody else, because some of those lawsuits do talk about credit cards in other people's names. So I don't know why we're bringing up other housewives that might have credit cards, and maybe because other housewives have credit cards in other names, but I just don't know where that would have come from because Lisa said it pretty definitively, but Angie and Heather seem kind of confused. But that's where Heather says, well, you know, Angie, you got to stop, you know, giving into it or adding fuel to her fire. But Angie doesn't think that's fair. She says, you know, if Lisa's going to come for me, I'm gonna step up. And, you know, just because you dye your hair bowling ball black doesn't mean I don't know how to do hair or have a good salon, blah, blah, blah. And that's where Heather says, well, when you say things like that. But I know the devil doesn't need advocates, but I will say Lisa does it a lot too. They all do it. Heather does it too. Let's be honest with it. It's like Housewives 101. You have to throw a little subtle jab in there, or not so subtle, every chance you can get. But we wrap up this scene, and this is where things get heavy, folks. We go to a nursery where Whitney and Brittany that's funny, Whitney and Brittany are shopping for some plants, some cacti we see later in particular, looking for ones they can't really kill. I mean, that's why I have plastic, because I'm not doing all that. But they're looking around, chatting, been meaning to talk to each other and apologize for some things that they may have said about each other's business, their dating lives, and they wrap that up pretty quickly, which is pretty impressive. But then we do get to why Whitney is really here to talk to Brittany, and this is where things get rather intense for me, because we know that Brittany does not have a great relationship with her children, in particular her daughter, one of her daughters. And we know this because while they're shopping around for plants, Brittany shares that they would be great to put in areas of her house that Jared is helping her fix up. So that's when Whitney sighs and she's like, are you really dating him again? Come on, Brittany. And she said, well, we're trying. Obviously the engagement's called off, but we're taking it slow. We're also trying to like keep the kids in mind and what they want. And that's when Whitney says, well, what do the kids want? And she said, well, the kids want us to take it slow, not really like living with each other, not getting like rushing to get married. And I believe it's her daughter in particular, Olivia, just says like, you know, I just don't want to feel like I'm competing for you with a man. And Whitney does say to her, well, like, is that happening? To which Brittany says, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I want to date and everything. And so Whitney says, well, what does your daughter want from you to make your relationship better? Because Brittany doesn't want this strained relationship. And that's when she says, well, she wants me to like stay at home and like not be dating for now and like figure things out. And Whitney says, well, can you do that? Can you take a little break from dating? Can you just really focus on being their mother? Guys, in this moment, Brittany literally says, that'd be a big ask. And when she did that, and I even saw like Whitney like take her by the shoulders and be like, put the cactus down, like talk to me, like we're actually filming. Like I hope you know that everyone is gonna hear you say that. And she's like, you and your daughter and like being a mother should come before you being a girlfriend to an Osmond, to anybody. And that's when Whitney opens up some stories about being estranged from her mother and not being on speaking terms, and how even though they weren't on speaking terms, she still loved her, she still worried about her, she still needed her, and that's time you can't get back. And she says to her that she really hopes that there doesn't come a time where her daughter doesn't give her chances anymore, because Jared or any guy might not be there forever, but you have your daughter right there begging for you, begging to spend time with you. And it's not like it's because you need to work 3 jobs to make ends meet and to put food on the table for them, and that's why you're not around. You know, you're gallivanting around with a guy, probably partly because of his last name, and you literally say, well, what am I supposed to do? Just sit at home? Be a mother! Oh my gosh, like movie night, have dinner together, take them out, go to the mall, go shopping, ask them how school is going, literally anything. And this part just upset me so much, because even Whitney was like, it's alarming to me right now that you are not seeing that this is alarming. Like it should be like instinctively you are wanting to do anything for her, drop everything, my daughter comes first. And the fact that I'm not seeing that in you right now, it's not natural, is scary. And I agree. I have talked to some of my friends that are familiar with the Mormon faith or are Mormon, who say, you know, sometimes in different areas, the woman might be really led or educated to believe that the man is put on such a high pedestal first, like they sit at the head of the table, eat before the children, everything. That's not everywhere, but that's from what I've heard. Some areas might believe that, and I wonder if Brittany doesn't know anything other than putting a man at the top and having the kids be an afterthought. And this scene was so sad because I've just had, not in terms of like being around, but it's like when it comes to like your mother and how like instinctively they should be the one like being protective, being the mama bear, being there to save you, or if you need them, you can call them. And even if they don't have $1 to lend you, they have a shoulder to cry on. And Brittany's just missing that gene. And, you know, in the last decade, I feel like I don't see that gene in my mom anymore. And like, I just don't see her feeling bad that we don't speak. And it's like, I want to speak with her, but it's like, I want her to want me. Like, I wish she was like trying to reach out. I sometimes wish she knows where I live. Like, I just wish she wanted me, and that would make me want it back, I guess. Like, she seems very content with like no contact, and I have to maybe be that way too. And that's what makes me think about Brittany Bateman, because eventually her daughter will be in the stage I am, where she's like, are you content with no contact? And so that's why this scene really got to me. But, you know, sheesh, it was a lot. So let's move on to an even more emotionally debilitating scene, and this is the one with Muzzy and Bronwyn. And if we thought we knew a little bit about Muzzy before, we really got a lot of her now. Gwen and her boyfriend are leaving to go bowling, which is obviously their alone time. And we know now that Gwen is pretty much around the same age that Bronwyn was when she had her. So seeing her, you know, go out and have alone time with her boyfriend, sure, it can make her a little nervous, but not in the way that Muzzy reacts and says like, that would have never happened under my roof, or, you know, don't they have plenty of alone time in the East Wing? I'm like, Muzzy, you're sleeping over on the West Wing, so don't you be making comments about the East Wing. Last time I checked, you were swiping their card. You were under their roof, as far as I know. Maybe not swiping their card, but you were under their roof. You were living in their house. Don't be making comments. Don't be rude. So already I'm getting like a little heated. I feel my chest getting splotchy watching this scene, because I already know who Muzzy is. I have a Muzzy in my life. I know Muzzy. So when I saw that and I saw the looks on her face, I was like, okay, here we go. And it's like, I had heard some recaps. I heard she was bad, but I was like, let me get into it. So we do talk a bit about this and how Bronwyn is raising Gwen differently than Muzzy raised Bronwyn and her sisters. And Muzzy agrees, and that's obviously the case. And she basically says, never over my dead body. You could have put my head on a chopping block. Did I think the way I was raising you that you would be out drinking, smoking, having sex, getting pregnant? And she was like, well, I don't want to raise my daughter to not be able to come and tell me things, and, you know, just wants to do it different because that's how she experienced it growing up, and it just was not great. You know, she felt awful all the time, and clearly it didn't work. So when Muzzy says that Bronwyn is taking a different approach than she would have, and that's parenting she's never seen work, Bronwyn says, well, is how you parented me the best method? Because that clearly didn't work either. And you can tell Muzzy's really trying not to buck up right now, but you can tell she gets a little tight, and she just still wants to double down that she, you know, raised Bronwyn and her sisters the right way, and that she was even more shocked that Bronwyn was the youngest and didn't seem to follow in her daughter's or her sister's footsteps. And she's just going, twisting the knife, man. We get a story from Bronwyn where she tells us that she's pregnant the same time her sisters are, but she was not allowed to be celebrated. She didn't get a baby shower. She really didn't get to be excited. And even when she went to the Baby Gap one time with her mom to get something for her sister, the cashier apologizes profusely, thinking it's for Bronwyn. And it's like, I'm sorry, I thought you were pregnant. Are you getting something for yourself? And Muzzy was like, no, like they're not getting anything for her. So they treated her like the freaking like Harry Potter under the cupboards, you know, at the Dursleys, or like just like the ugly duckling of the house. And it's just so sad because like I've never been pregnant, but like I just know you can't be under stress like that. And that's when they start talking about how no matter what, Muzzy wanted to make sure Bronwyn would never get pregnant again, or that she was going to be so miserable that something like this would never happen again. And Muzzy kind of agrees and is like, well, yeah, how miserable do you think I was trying to hide it? Hide it? Are you kidding me? And again, that's where we kind of go into, I don't want to compare her to Lisa, but the whole concept of like somebody needing to be the biggest victim of all, or, you know, weighing which, tragedy or problem is bigger, or who should we feel sorry for the most. And it's not a competition. Tragedy, grief. This isn't even tragedy or grief. This is something that could be celebrated, but you turned it into that. It's not a competition. And so the fact that she says, well, how miserable do you think I was? You were not pregnant, Muzzy. You weren't sitting there making sure that she felt so terrible about herself. And oh my God, I'm going to start crying, because this is a mother that never saw her daughter, never saw her, never actually saw her for who she was. I don't know if her mom loves her. I really don't, because when you, and honestly, cameras or not, I think that that's how it would go. In fact, having the cameras there, you would have thought she'd be a bit warmer. So that's why this is even more alarming, because who even knows what those conversations are like behind closed doors. And while we're here, Muzzy, you want to sit here and talk about how the two other daughters were so holier than thou, and I'm going to go to the baby Gap and shop for them and give them a shower and everything, and they would never do this. Okay, well, if they are so perfect, why aren't you living with them right now? Why did you have to come and move back in with Bronwyn, your daughter who's such a failure, who's probably like paying for the memory care that her father's in right now? And that's not Todd's house. That's Todd and Bronwyn's. Like, let's get it right. Bronwyn is his wife. That is her life too. So I just find it so freaking rich that she's going to come back here and still say she did everything right and that she stands by how she treated her daughter, only to have to come back and need her daughter now, and that she would never get the life like this that she wants without Todd. Well, you know what? You wouldn't be having this life either. And what's so wrong with Bronwyn wanting a life like this? You wanted her to have the life that you were setting up for her? Where you were saying that you were afraid that Gwen was going to go into foster care or have to be adopted, or that you thought that she was going to be like out in these streets trying to make ends meet? Get out of here. No, I'm tired of that. This one really, I cried watching this, because it sucks to feel like you're never enough. And then when you finally are an adult and you can make your own decisions and you can choose the trajectory of your life, and things turn out a little better than you thought, and they turned out a little better for you than they did for your parents, only for them to then come on back and be like, wow, still don't agree with how you got here, but can you pay my electric bill? Or, hey, we need a lawyer, or we need help, we're going to be evicted. Like, can you do this? Can you do that? Oh, by the way, totally disagree with your lifestyle. Don't like your spouse, but, can he help us do this? Hey, can your friend help me get an interview for this job? Oh, we're not going to show up. Like, only now for them to want nothing to do with me. When I couldn't afford to pay their bills first, because then mine started to fall behind, and I had to cut that off, and then they left. Why? That's just like, I'm sorry, this is like stream of consciousness here, or like whatever, but I'm just like sitting here in chills. I'm like, different levels of hurt, maybe like what I went through with my parents and what Bronwyn obviously went through with her parents. But I can see her pain, because many times, once I had the means to do it again or replenished funds or something, I went back, and then I was constantly hurt, because that's all I may have been there for. And maybe in their eyes, that's not the case, but they had the money to get remarried. They had the money to all get new phones. They had the money to get a dog. But every time they needed to move, and I had to pay those bills, they were around. But now they're fine, and I spend my holidays alone. But whatever, because those are days I can spend by myself and do my own thing, and I don't have to deal with a bunch of family drama. So let me stop by just saying, if you're a mother and you happen to be watching this, and you think you know what's best for your children, just know that they're humans too, and their age does not mean that they don't know necessarily what's best for them. I'm not saying like where they go to school, where they live, or like some major like, you know, body decisions or something. But if your child wants to go down a career path and they are so about it, let them. If your child is really upset and like needs a professional to talk to or like a doctor, please take them. If your child is having maybe some friendship fights or is going through things, listen to them. Like, please just be there, because when you only come around if you need money or it's transactional, man, it hurts more than other relationship dynamics. There's something weird about a parent-child relationship being transactional that really hurts. And seeing Muzzy run her nasty ass caterpillar eyebrow, dry, crusty ass lip self on and on with that I'm fine, everything's fine sweater on. Nasty work. And that's why these thoughts aren't very coherent right now, because I'm just sitting here like thinking about how like I just know that woman. But let's stop talking about her. Let's get to where we're starting to wrap up this episode. Meredith gets out of the car to meet Angie for coffee, and no, I did not misspeak. Meredith did in fact get out of the car. Not just any car though, a Lexus. And you're probably like, well, hey, Meredith doesn't drive. That's weird. Pretty sure it was a brand deal. She mentions that there's like a little caviar console in like the middle, which I'm sure is just like a cooler. But I'm pretty sure on social media, Lexus and her like had like a brand deal or partnership after. So Meredith is gonna drive if it's a Lexus and it is paid for. So they meet up. Angie and Meredith are not always on the best of terms. They don't always see eye to eye, but they try to keep it cute. And I will say that they're two people that can keep it cordial and be professional and mature. We saw some cutbacks to like the camping trip, which now like feels like forever ago, even though this is only like episode 4. But this is where they start to unpack different things about Lisa and what she's going through. And when Meredith tries to explain maybe where Lisa's coming from, that's where Angie decides in that moment to say, well, hey, I need to let you know that when you and Lisa weren't good at sometimes, she told me to go and do some digging on people in your family or friends, or to look up bankruptcy or shoplifting allegations or things on you, or she would tell me what to Google. And Meredith is like, well, if Lisa and I are good right now and you and Lisa aren't good, like, I don't know, like, why would you be telling me this? And like, as far as I know, like, Lisa and I have never been that bad that she would go and tell Angie things. So like, she's not really buying it. But we'll get to the bottom of it. I know Meredith is going to ask her in the next episode directly, like, Lisa, did you do this? It's tough because if you do go back, it's like we had Lisa in like a hot mic moment. Like, remember she said that thing about like Meredith being like a whore and sleeping with all of New York. She's like running her mouth about everyone. I'm like, even when in the last episode she tells Bronwyn that she's going to make like a book and expose her and all of her lies in it. And she's like, oh, a smear campaign? Like, I'm used to you doing that. So I don't know how much digging Lisa does, but we'll see. We're going to find out soon enough, that's for sure. But ultimately, this episode was a lot to unpack. There were some silly, funny moments. These women do know how to bring it and to also bring comedic relief at the right time. I won't go as far as saying that it's like rehearsed, but I think they know the cameras are there and when they may need some comedic relief, which I find beneficial. With that being said though, I hope that the next episode we cover a little less of the parents, because I need a break. Between like how heartwarming it was to see like Angie and her dad in the last episode, only to contrast it with like Brittany's lack of awareness in motherhood and Muzzy's sheer, I don't want to say it seems like she hates Bronwyn, but she doesn't like her. I just don't think she likes her own daughter. And it's really sad, because I know what it feels like to just like not be liked by family, or to be like that person that's not liked just because you didn't follow their playbook. But let's talk about good things now. The Smile Award. So my Smile Award for this episode is going to go to the Louis Vuitton multicolored COVID mask that Mary Cosby took out of her purse because she thought it was a tissue that she needed to blow her nose on when she was crying in the church. That part had me dying. Like, I needed a good laugh in that moment. I really, really did. Originally, I think I wanted this to go to like Whitney for talking some sense into Brittany, but it didn't really make me smile. It just was like, yeah, Whitney's right. Like, you know, I was just kind of like, that was getting like my head nod. But yeah, Mary's Louis Vuitton COVID mask that she used as a Kleenex. That's getting my smile award. And then when it comes to the episode rating, I'm gonna give this one a 7 out of 10. It did feel kind of like a filler episode. I'm gonna do like a -1 because I'm just like really sad after watching, because it had me like unpacking some of my own mommy issues. I'll do another -1 because it just kind of felt like a filler episode with like a lot of like the hair salon, the going to meet up at places for coffee, a lot of like those little like small scenes just kind of felt like they needed to be fillers. And maybe just another -1 because just because I can't give it an 8. It just was meh. Because when you compare it to other episodes that are like, wow. Oh, I'll give it another -1 because the French fries and franchise thing, I've just already heard it too much. So like I'm already over it. But all good though. Still a good franchise. They're tearing it up. Episode's gonna be on tonight, so I'm gonna try to get this posted before then. I've just been behind with work and a lot of just craziness. And to be honest, I was gonna try to film this like right after watching it, but I was crying. So yeah, the mommy issues are real. But I'm thankful that these housewives are being so vulnerable about motherhood, whether it's being the mother or the relationship with their mother. It just has me thinking what I should do next with mine, but I think that's it for now. So until then, see ya.